Cartel-like behaviour, making excuses, and a model that may be entirely broken. Formula One has received a stinging attack over its continued opposition to Andretti Cadillac's would-be new team. The dispute over F1's rejection of the planned General Motors-backed Andretti Global project has escalated amid mounting political pressure in the United States. The proposed new F1 team has been in limbo for months, ever since the commercial rights holder dismissed its application despite the FIA giving Andretti the green light in October last year. Since being blocked, Andretti has continued with its preparations, pursued a dialogue with Formula One management to try to get it to reconsider, and been considering its options should that fail. Getting political support in the US appears to be crucial to that final point. Ahead of the Miami Grand Prix, 1978 world champion Mario Andretti was invited to Capitol Hill after a dozen US politicians signed a letter calling for more information about the team's rejection and expressing concerns that F1 was exhibiting cartel-like behaviour by refusing to expand the grid. This has been followed up by the revelation of a letter sent post-race from another politician, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee Jim Jordan, to Liberty Media President and CEO Greg Maffei and F1 President and CEO Stefano Domenicali, demanding answers. The Committee on the Judiciary is authorised to conduct oversight of and legislate on matters relating to the protection of trade and commerce against unlawful restraints and monopolies. We understand that F1's position on Andretti and GM is unchanged, meaning this action is likely to result in a confrontation, for it is rooted in the reasons for rejecting Andretti, which F1 stands by and Andretti and its supporters clearly disagree with. Congressman Jordan says that they are just excuses that appear to be pretextual, arbitrary and unrelated to Andretti Cadillac's suitability to compete in Formula One. So what's going on? How does it impact the standoff, and what happens next? One of the reasons the rejection rationale was so controversial is F1 took it upon itself to evaluate the likely competitiveness of the entry, as it viewed that as intrinsically linked to its potential value. It determined an 11th team alone would not provide value and cited various reasons for concern about Andretti's project specifically. Andretti had a provisional Renault deal lined up that the French manufacturer no longer seems keen on, and F1 fears having to compel another manufacturer to supply an engine would be damaging to the prestige and standing of the championship. The rules state that an existing engine manufacturer will be picked to supply any team that cannot strike a deal on its own, so the implication is Andretti would be hamstrung by such an arrangement and potentially more compromised than a normal customer. While the Andretti name carries some recognition for F1 fans, F1 decided it would bring value to the Andretti brand rather than the other way around. The addition of an 11th team would place an operational burden on race promoters, F1 said, would subject some of them to significant costs to expand facilities to accommodate the extra team, and would reduce garage, paddock and hospitality spaces of the other competitors. F1 also claimed it was not able to identify any material expected positive effect on Liberty Media's financial results as a key indicator of the pure commercial value of the championship. The mounting US political pressure marks an end to an unusually quiet period in this dispute, which has bounced between at times antagonistic Andretti tactics and frustrating, uncooperative F1 silence. Jordan believes the Judiciary Committee has the means to investigate F1, which is owned by US company Liberty Media, because sports leagues operate in a notable area of antitrust law. He asserts that F1 may be engaging in collusion that amounts to anti-competitive conduct by rejecting Andretti, and that even delaying the entry by a year will harm American consumers to benefit failing Formula One teams. Though it is unclear why Jordan believes American consumers will lose out, it is presumably based on the perceived interest there would be in watching Andretti Cadillac compete. As for the failing teams he cites, that is most likely referencing the fact many teams do not compete regularly for wins and podiums, which F1 used as a benchmark to judge whether Andretti Cadillac would be competitive. F1's exact wording was that the best mark of competitiveness would be, in particular, by competing for podiums and race wins, as this would materially increase fan engagement and increase the value of the championship in the eyes of key stakeholders and sources of revenue. Jordan's letter is based on various media reports and statements and includes us among its cited sources, which we have to say is a first to appear alongside a US Congress letterhead. And it properly lays into the way F1 is handling this. He writes that limiting the number of teams will increase the price of sponsoring or buying into an existing team, and that if F1 must hinder competition and harm consumers to protect failing competitors, then the entire Formula 1 model may be broken. If that's the case, he asserts, then F1 cannot hide behind the necessity of a sports league to pursue anti-competitive conduct. The upshot is, Jordan's requested a detailed briefing on the decision to deny Andretti Cadillac's application. This includes demanding documents and communications regarding the process F1 conducted, anything referring or related to Andretti Global, as well as between or among Formula 1 Group, Liberty Media and the 10 existing teams about the entry of a new team. F1 is not yet commenting publicly on the matter, but Andretti Global, which has been rather quiet of late and let others do the talking, said it is glad that the decision to investigate the practices of Liberty and FOM has been made. There has been communication between the parties, and a meeting was held recently in the weeks leading up to Miami. This could have happened months ago, when F1 wrote to Andretti in December extending an invitation to an in-person meeting at its offices for Andretti to present its application. But Andretti did not take F1 up on this offer, which it claimed was the result of the email ending up in a junk folder. Despite in-person discussions finally happening, little real progress has been made. Andretti's understood to have confirmed its entry is all about 2026, having initially made a lot of noise about 2025, which was one of F1's reasons for rejecting it. Andretti sees competing in 2026 and 27 as a necessary glide path before adopting the GM Works engine in 2028. But as nothing has fundamentally changed in F1's position, the impasse continues. That may well be what encouraged political interference in the US. Meanwhile, Andretti has adopted a favoured messaging that it is pushing on with its plans at pace, which includes inaugurating a UK base. Andretti Global has formally unveiled a 48,000 square foot building at Silverstone with the potential to scale it up further. One suggestion is that this could be something of a red herring, given it is not a standalone F1 facility and will also come to incorporate the Andretti Formula E team that is based in Banbury. Andretti does describe it as a collaborative site for our global family of race teams. How it compares to other local F1 teams in that area, such as Mercedes and Haas, F1's smallest team, is debatable, with some suggestions it is inferior to those. But it is unfinished. As Andretti says, it will be completed in phases according to commercial and sporting needs and workforce requirements, and it's not meant to be a full-scale headquarters. This UK site is just a European satellite, with Andretti's principal site being in Indiana, given Andretti's commitment to being an all-American team. There are also plans to utilise Cadillac and GM facilities in the US, like the GM Tech Center in North Carolina. These different locations have shared the F1 project workload so far. F1 didn't close the door completely on Andretti with its rejection earlier this year. There was a carrot dangled for 2028. That's when the project would have the GM Works engine, and F1's official position is it would look differently on that kind of programme. The suggestion is that F1 would likely accept that entry, but that's very easy to say now in a bid to kick the can down the road, shut Andretti up, and then never actually follow through. Especially as in its initial rejection of Andretti, F1 argued that a novice constructor in partnership with a new engine supplier would have a significant challenge to overcome. And it pointed out that most of the attempts to establish a new constructor in the last several decades have not been successful. It is also important to note that the original FIA selection process was for 2025, 26 or 27. That means the FIA would probably have to reopen the entire process and give other teams that were originally rejected completely, like Hi-Tech, another crack at getting in. One other factor that could become relevant is speculation of a proposal to enshrine a maximum 10-team grid in the Concord Agreement. That would turn the perception that F1 is a closed shop and a cartel into reality. Right now, F1 can legitimately, if tenuously, claim that it is not inherently opposed to expanding the grid because all the relevant regulations and commercial framework allow for up to 13 teams to compete. Eradicating that would be a terrible look, as well as self-defeating. If a desirable manufacturer-backed team was ready and willing to enter F1, the championship would be obliged to turn it away. And this is not presently thought to be a serious prospect. So the main question is whether F1 is serious about its 2028 proposal for a GM Works team, and whether Andretti's willing to drop its 2026 ambition, call F1's bluff, and find out. There's not really a clock on this process as a whole, although individual elements have a mix of specific and non-specific deadlines. For example, F1 has been given until May the 21st to respond to Jordan's letter, so there is a short-term limbo while he awaits a reply, and then the possibility for further escalation if he does not get it or it is unsatisfactory. Bigger picture, the FIA has accepted Andretti Cadillac's entry, and if the team's work continues at pace, then it will presumably keep on with its wind tunnel work on a current regulations car and be waiting to start developing a car for the 2026 rules. That feels a long way down the road, but it probably means an indeterminate deadline this year to draw a line under this either way to avoid this woeful situation descending into true farce. F1 could be grappling with a scenario in which a team has a right to an entry from the FIA but no commercial agreement from F1 or place in the paddock or some other nonsense setup. We can foresee 3 realistic options at this stage. 1. The pressure being brought on F1 will bear fruit, it will change its position and Andretti Cadillac will get a 2026 entry. 2. That does not happen and Andretti launches a full-on legal challenge. Or 3. Andretti accepts that 2026 isn't happening, calls F1's bluff and commits completely to the idea of entering in 2028 as the unequivocal GM works team. And we find out if F1's really just intending to run through this all over again.